Hello everyone. Welcome to Bharatiya Darshanik Manch. Today we are going to discuss about Carvaka Metaphysics. Carvaka, as we all know, is a materialistic school, and it is one of the heterodox school of Indian philosophy. So before delving into the Carvaka metaphysics, we need to know Carvaka epistemology. Why? Because there is a connection between Carvaka metaphysics and its epistemology. So the first thing that comes in our mind is, what is epistemology? The word epistemology means theories of knowledge. So when we say theories of knowledge, which generates another question in our mind, that is there one single theory, two theories, or many theories of knowledge? And what is the knowledge that we are talking about? And why is it relevant to study the theories of knowledge? See, what happens that in epistemology, we discuss about the reality and the ways to know the reality. And what is real? Is it the perceived things that are real, or is it the unperceived things that are real? Is it the word that we perceive with our eyes and we perceive only that world is real, or the world that we cannot perceive, like the world beyond this world, the world beyond our perception, is that real? So another question that comes while studying the epistemology is that how far we can know the reality. And the next question that comes is, how does knowledge originate and develop? How do we know the reality? How do we know the perceptible world, the world around us? And how do we know the world that is not perceptible, that is beyond our perception? So when we talk about the world beyond our perception, or the objects or the reality beyond our perception, then we basically are talking about God, a creator, a designer of this world. Or we also talk about soul, whether soul exists or not. Sometimes we call it soul, sometimes we call it consciousness. So we also include these things in reality: the soul, the God, the life after death. The next thing that comes in our mind is, what are the different sources of knowledge? What are the different sources of knowing this reality, the perceptible reality and the unperceptible reality? So there are certain words that we need to remember while reading the Indian philosophy. And often these words are in Hindi or in Sanskrit. So one thing that you have to remember is, you need to learn their definition, right? So the first word that comes is prama. What is prama? We define prama as knowledge of reality or valid cognition. Another term is praman. What is praman? It is defined as the source of knowledge of reality. Now, we have many pramanas. In Indian philosophy, we have 6 pramanas, and Charvaka accepts only one pramana, that is perception. We have other pramanas as well: inference, verbal testimony, postulation, non-existence. But Charvaka does not accept all other pramanas. What Charvaka does, Charvakas criticize the other pramanas, the other sources of knowing the reality. Now, here is a list of all the pramanas that are acceptable in Indian philosophy. Different schools accepts different pramanas, different number of pramanas. Charvaka accepts perception only, but we have other pramanas like inference, that is also understood as anuman. We have verbal testimony, that is also known as shabd. We have comparison, which is also known as upaman. We have postulation, which is also understood as arthapatti. Then we have non-existence, which is also understood as anuplabdhi. Now what Charvaka says, as we already discussed, that Charvakas believe in perception only. They only take perception as a valid source of knowledge. They do not accept inference or any other pramanas. They are saying that inference is not certain. The arguments what they give is that, first argument is, if inference is to be regarded as a pramana, it must yield knowledge about which we can have no doubt and which must be true to reality. So there are two conditions that are applied here. First condition is that the knowledge that is yielded by inference must be undoubtable. There should not be any doubt about that knowledge. And second thing is that, the second condition is that it must be true to reality. So now what Charvaka says, that inference cannot fulfill any of these conditions, because when we infer, for example, the existence of fire in a mountain from the perception of smoke in it, we take a leap in the dark from the perceived smoke to the unperceived fire. So what Charvakas believe, that when we are inferring the case of fire, whenever we perceive the smoke, it is a leap in the dark. Why it is a leap? Because we cannot see the fire there. We are inferring the fire. Fire is not perceivable object here. Smoke is perceived. So this is not acceptable to Charvaka. But if we talk about a logician like Nyayikas, what they will say? They will say that this leap of inferring fire when we perceive the smoke is justified. And why this leap is justified? Because of the previous knowledge of the invariable concomitance, that is vyapti, between smoke and fire. As we know that we have the previous knowledge of vyapti between smoke and fire. And what is this vyapti? What is this invariable relation? It is that whenever we see that there is smoke, there is fire. So in one place we have seen that there was smoke, and we see that, okay, there is fire. In another instance, we see the same thing. So what we do, we have this knowledge. We make this knowledge about vyapti, about the existence of smoke and fire together. So we believe that whenever there is smoke, there must be fire. This inference can also be written in a logical way. So there are two premises given, and then we have a conclusion based on that premise. So the first premise is, all cases of smoke are cases of fire. So first premise is, all cases of smoke are cases of fire. Whenever we are seeing that there is smoke, we have seen that whenever there are smoke, there is fire as well. So all cases, be it in mountain or be it on earth, wherever there was smoke, we have seen there was fire as well. The second premise is, this is a case of smoke. Suppose there is a mountain in front of you and there is smoke on the mountain, and this case is a case of smoke, that you are seeing the smoke on the mountain. So what we draw as a conclusion is that this is a case of fire. So on the mountain, there was smoke. You have seen the smoke, and because of your previous knowledge, you infer that, you conclude that this is a case of fire. Now, the Carvaka points out that this contention would be acceptable only if the minor premise stating the invariable relation between the middle term and the major term were beyond doubt. The argument is that the major premise, which talk about the invariable relation, that is vyapti, between smoke and fire, if this major premise were beyond doubt, then this argument would be accepted. But this invariable relation, this vyapti, can be established only if we have knowledge of all cases of smoke and all cases of fire. So what happens is that the invariable relation between smoke and fire is doubted. It is doubtful. Why it is doubtful? Because we cannot perceive all the cases of existence of smoke and fire together. That is the reason that we cannot establish vyapti. And can we have knowledge of all cases of smoke and all cases of fire? See, all cases of smoke and fire will include all cases of knowledge of smoke and fire together in past, all cases of smoke and fire together in present, and all cases of fire and smoke together in the future. There will not be any limitation of space and time. So, is it possible for a human being to perceive all the cases of smoke and all cases of fire in the entire world right now? So, as we are finite beings, we are limited beings, we have limited perception, we have limited knowledge, we cannot perceive all the instances of smoke and fire happening right now. Okay. Even if you forget the past occurrences and future occurrences, still there will be a limitation of space. So what happens next is, this is not possible. It is not possible to know all the cases of fire and smoke, as we cannot perceive even all the cases of smoke and fire existing now in different parts of the world, to speak nothing of those which existed in the past or will exist in future. So even if we do not talk about the occurrences of fire and smoke together in past and future, even if we are not talking about past and future occurrences, still we cannot know all the occurrences of smoke and fire happening in the present. So no invariable universal relation, that is no vyapti, can be established by perception. Right? Neither can it be said to be based on another inference. We can also not say that it is based on inference, because it will involve a petitio principii, since the validity of that inference again has to be similarly proved. We cannot say that we are inferring the fire on the basis of perception of smoke, because again, then we have to prove that inference, similarly as we were proving before. So here a term comes, that is petitio principii. So what is this term? This term is, it can be understood as begging the question or circular argument. It is a fallacy. It is a logical fallacy. When we will study logic, we will look at it in detail. So what this fallacy says, right now we can have a look at its definition, and later when we will discuss logic, we will study this in detail. It is the fallacy of assuming in the premise or premises of an argument a statement which is equivalent to the conclusion. Thus, what is to be proved has already been assumed in the premises, which is of course not logical. If you have already assumed what you have to conclude, then what will happen? It will give you a circular argument. It is like similar to saying that A exists because of B and B exists because of A. So what happens here is that we are giving the reason for A's existence as B, and the reason for B's existence is A. So hence, we cannot prove anything in that sense. So what's next is that, nor can this vyapti be based on the testimony. Now Charvakas are rejecting the testimony. Earlier they have rejected the inference. Now they are rejecting the testimony. What is a testimony? A testimony is the words, the shabda of a reliable person. And who is a reliable person? A person who is experienced person, right? What we call aptavakya of aptapurush, a person who is reliable, who is authoritative, who has the authority, or in general we can say that who has the knowledge of everything. So if that person says that all cases of smoke are cases of fire, right? So even in that sense as well, we cannot say that vyapti is established. Why? Because for the validity of testimony itself requires to be proved by inference. So when you are talking about testimony, when you are talking about words of a reliable person, these words are also based on inference, right? And what is that inference? The inference is that first thing that the person is experienced, the person has the knowledge about something, and then the person is talking about that thing which he has knowledge. Now, if the person is knowledgeable and experienced, that person will say something, you will accept it as a reliable knowledge. And what happens that in one instance, when the person says something and you take the person to be reliable person, and you take the person's words as a reliable words or reliable knowledge, then your mind automatically concludes that the person is reliable and the knowledge he is giving is reliable. Then in future cases, then you accept his words without any doubt. So that is what you are doing. Like we inferring from particular to universal, from his one sentence to all other future sentences. So from one of his sentences true, that's why we have accepted that all of his sentences in future will be true. That's how we are accepting a person's reliable words. Besides, if inference always depended on testimony, no one could infer anything by himself. So what Charvakas are saying, that if inference always depended on testimony, no one could infer anything by himself. Why? Because we always need someone to say that this thing is right. So in this sense, inference would be impossible. So what is the next question? It is that though it is not possible to perceive all individual cases of smoke and fire, is it not possible to perceive the constant class character, that is samanya, like smokeness and fireness, which must be invariably present in all instances of smoke and fire respectively? So this question is asked by opponent of Charvaka. So what they are asking to Charvakas is it not possible to perceive all individual cases of smoke and fire? If we perceive the constant class character, that is the samanya, which is smokeness and fireness, which is invariably present in all instances of smoke and fire. So whenever there is smoke, there must be smokeness, because smoke has smokeness as its class character and fire has fireness as its class character. So we can say that, like, it is a question, can we not say that smokeness and fireness is present in all the cases of smoke and fire respectively? So let's see what Charvakas are talking about it. If so, then can we not say that we at least perceive a relation between smokeness and fireness, and with its help infer the presence of fire wherever we perceive smoke? So if we are accepting the class character of smoke and fire, if we are accepting that smoke has smokeness and fire has fireness, so when we are accepting their samanya, the class characters, then can we not say that there is a relation, or we are perceiving the relation between smokeness and fireness, and with its help we can infer the presence of fire, because we are seeing the smoke. We perceive what we perceive smoke, and then what we say, that smoke has smokeness, and there is a relation between smokeness and fireness. So as there is smoke, so there is smokeness, and as there is smokeness, there must be fireness, and as there must be fireness, there must be fire as well. So what Charvaka's reply is that even if we grant the perception of a relation between smokeness and fireness, we cannot know therefrom any invariable relation between all individual cases of smoke and fire. So what Charvakas are saying, that okay, you accept that there is smoke and there is smokeness in smoke, and there is a relation between smokeness and fireness, and wherever there is smokeness, there must be fireness, and as there is fireness, there must be fire. But still, you cannot say this for all the cases of smoke and fire. This is what Charvakas are replying, that you cannot treat all individual cases alike. Right? So what they say, to be able to infer a particular fire, we must know that it is inseparably related to the particular smoke perceived. So what Charvakas are talking about, they are talking that forget about all cases. If you are taking one particular instance even, what you have to do, you cannot infer particular fire unless you see it. To infer a particular fire, you must be able to say that it is inseparably related to particular smoke perceived. So Charvakas are talking about a particular instance, that there must be smoke. Sorry, as there is smoke, there must be fire, and this relation must be perceived in that individual example when you are seeing it. Okay. In fact, it is not possible even to know by perception what smokeness or the class character universally present in all particular instances of smoke, because we do not perceive all cases of smoke. So what Charvakas are saying, they're saying that you cannot say that smoke, all the cases of smoke has smokeness. They are like denying this universally present class character in particular instances. So, and why they are saying this? They are saying this because we do not perceive all cases of smoke. We as a finite and a finite being, we have limited knowledge. We cannot perceive all the cases in the world. So we cannot say that all the cases or all the particular cases have this universal class character in them. Okay. So what is found to be universally present in the perceived cases of smoke may not be present in the unperceived ones. So what Charvakas are saying, they are giving the argument and they are saying that all those cases that you have perceived, all those cases of that you have perceived, whatever is present there, whatever character is present there, you cannot say the same thing for the unperceived cases of smoke. So there is perceived cases and there is unperceived cases. So whatever you have understood or whatever you have inferred from the perceived cases, you cannot say the same thing for the unperceived cases, right? The difficulty of passing from particulars to universal remains here as before. So there is a difficulty that you cannot pass from particular to universal. You cannot say that in one instance, if you see where there's smoke, there is fire, then you infer and you say that all the cases of smoke are the cases of fire. So you cannot go from particular to universal. But a question arises and it can be asked, if we do not believe in any fixed universal law underlying the phenomena of the world, how would we explain the uniformities that experienced object possess? So if there is no universal law underlying the phenomena of the world, the things that are happening in the world, if there is no universal law, then we cannot explain the uniformities that we are perceiving there. And what are these uniformities? The uniformities like that fire is always hot. So this is a universal phenomena, that whether there is a fire in front of you or whether there is a fire 100 miles away from you, the fire will be hot, right? The fire, whether it is in India or it is in some other country out of India, the fire will still be hot and water will be cool. So what is it? It is a uniformity that objects possess, and there is some universal law underlying it. This is the question that is asked to Charvakas. Now let's see what Charvakas say. They reply that it is due to the inherent nature, that is swabhav of things, that they possess particular characters. So it is due to the swabhav or inherent nature of fire that we can experience the hotness of fire, and it is because of the nature of water that we experience the coldness of water, right? So what Charvaka says, again, they give the argument that no supernatural principle need to be supposed to account for the properties of experienced objects of nature. So we do not need a supernatural principle. We do not need a universal law to say that the fire is hot or the water is cold. it is its subhav. The subhav of fire is that it is hot. The subhav of water is that it is cold. Okay. There is neither any guarantee that uniformity perceived in the past would continue in future. Also, Charvaka gives argument that there is no guarantee that if you have seen that fire is hot in the past, fire was hot in the past, so the fire will continue to be hot in the future. There is no guarantee. What Charvakas are saying, that whatever the uniformity that you are perceiving right now will not continue in future. We do not have any guarantee. Or whatever uniformity that you have perceived in the past, whether it will continue in future or not, we do not have any guarantee. Now, a modern student of inductive logic would be tempted to ask the Charvakas. A modern student of inductive logic will ask, can we not base our knowledge of the invariable relation between smoke and fire on a causal relation between them? So can we not say that there is a causal relation between smoke and fire? So there is one thing that is cause and the other thing that is effect. So the cause of smoke, what will be the cause of smoke? Fire, definitely. Because there is smoke, we can say that smoke is an effect, and there must be some cause of that smoke that has caused it. So what has caused the smoke? It is the fire. There is a causal relation between them. But Charvakas will reply that a causal relation, being only a kind of invariable relation, cannot be established by perception owing to the same difficulty. What they are saying? They are saying that this causal relation cannot be accepted or cannot be established. Why? Because we cannot perceive the cause, the smoke. Charvakas would further point out that a causal or any other invariable relation cannot be established merely by repeated perception of two things occurring together. So, as we were saying earlier, that the cause of smoke is fire. Fire is the cause and smoke is the effect. So, when we are seeing the effect, we think that there must be a cause, but Charvakas are saying that if you are repeatedly perceiving two things together, it does not establish a causal relation. So there is a chance, there is a possibility that you have seen fire and smoke together many times in past, but it does not establish a causal relation between smoke and fire. For one must be certain that there is no other unperceived condition on which this relation depends. So, this causal relation, there is a possibility that this causal relation is dependent on unperceived conditions. There are some conditions which we cannot see, and because of those conditions, we are seeing the effects. So, for example, if a man perceives a number of times fire accompanied by smoke, and on another occasion he infers the existence of smoke on the perception of fire, he would be liable to error because he failed to notice a condition, namely wetness of fuel, on the presence of which alone fire is attended with smoke. So, what happens that there is wetness of fuel. There is fuel and it is wet. So, because of that, when it was burned, there wasn't any fire, but there was only smoke. There was no fire, but there was only smoke because of the wetness of fuel. It happens, right? Sometimes we see that a piece of wood, if it is wet and you try to burn it and it's not burning, but there is only smoke, So what happens that we have effect, but we have no cause. We have smoke, but we do not have fire as a cause, right? We have unperceived condition, that is upadhi, and that unperceived condition is wetness of fuel. So long as the relation between two phenomena is not proved to be unconditional, it is an uncertain ground for inference. So what happens that if it is not proved to be unconditional, unconditional means that there will be no condition other than the cause and effect, then only you can base your inference. And this does not happen, that it is not unconditional, right? And unconditionality or absence of conditions cannot be established beyond doubt by perception, as some conditions may always remain hidden and escape notice. So what happens that some conditions like wetness of fuel, you cannot always know whether the wood that you have brought is wet or not, whether it is wet or whether it is dry. You cannot always know. Maybe there's a possibility that the wood is dry from outside but it is wet from inside, so you cannot see that, right? Sometimes these conditions or these upadhis are hidden and they escape the notice, and because of the absence of conditions cannot be established beyond doubt by perception. So this cannot be established by perception. So now inference or testimony cannot be used for proving this unconditionality without a petitio principii. So without a circular argument, we cannot prove the inference or testimony because its validity is being questioned. It is true that in life we very often act unsuspectingly on inference. So what happens that in practical life, in vyavahar, what we do, we often act unsuspectingly. We do not suspect this much. We do not go on asking whether the wood is dry from outside only or whether the wood is dry from inside also. Whether we do not suspect so many things, right? What we do, we have to burn it, we have to cook food, and we do that, right? We do not go in every minute detail. But that only shows that we act uncritically on the wrong belief that our inference is true. So what happens as in our vyavahara, in our practical life, we do not suspect everything. What happens that in that way, so when we are talking about that there is smoke, so there must be fire, we have made this belief, right? Because of our past experiences or our past knowledge. So we have made this wrong belief that whenever we will see the smoke, we will infer that there will be fire, there must be fire, right? So this inference is based on wrong belief. But what happens that sometimes our inference comes true and leads to successful result. So sometimes it happens that we infer that as there is smoke, there must be fire, and we go near to the smoke and we see fire, we perceive it, and then it is the successful result. But what happens if the contrary thing is happening? If we see the smoke and we go near the smoke, but we see only there is smoke, there is no fire. So then there is no successful result. But it is also a fact that sometimes inference leads to error as well. So sometimes this inference can lead to error. Truth is not then an unfailing character of all inferences. It is only an accident and a separable one that we find only in some inferences. So what happens that whenever you are getting a successful result out of the inference, then it is only accident. It is not a inseparable accident. It is a separable accident. We can separate the successful result from inferences. Inferences can lead to successful result. Inferences can lead to errors as well. That's why inferences cannot be regarded as a valid source of knowledge according to Carvaka. Now, coming to testimony. Carvakas also do not accept testimony as a source of knowledge. Why? So somebody asked, or an opponent of Carvaka asked, can we not regard the testimony of competent person or the reliable person as a valid and safe source of knowledge? Can we not say that all those people who have experience, who have knowledge of everything, they are competent persons, right? And their words are valid source of knowledge. Do we not very often act on knowledge received from authority? So, isn't it the case that when we receive knowledge from authority, we act upon it, right? If somebody says that this is the cow and this is the rabbit, and then you accept it and you act on the basis of that knowledge. So this happens, right? More often this happens. But what Carvaka says, they reply that testimony consists of words. Testimony consists of Shabd Gyan. So far as words are heard through our eyes, they are perceived. So Carvakas are not accepting words as testimony. They are saying that the words are perceived by our ears. So it is also a perception. It is not a testimony. So knowledge of words is therefore knowledge through perception and is quite valid. So here Carvakas are, what they are doing, they are not accepting testimony as another source of knowledge. They are saying that it is also included in perception. And again, what they say, that insofar as these words suggest or mean things not within our perception and aim at giving us knowledge of those unperceived objects, they are not free from error and doubt. So if these words are giving us knowledge about unperceived objects, if the words that we are hearing or we are perceiving through our ears, if these words are giving us knowledge about something that we cannot perceive, for example, if the words are giving us knowledge about God, we cannot perceive God, so then these words are doubtful words. And they also say that very often we are misled by so-called authority. So authority here can be the authority of Vedas, the authority of a reliable person as well. Why Vedas? Because Vedas are also words. They are written words. Words are words, whether if they are written words or spoken words. So authority, the words comes from an authority. So when it is Vedas, the words are written words and the authority is Vedas. And when there is spoken words, then the authority is a reliable person who is speaking those words. So now, what Carvaka says, this is the authority of Vedas is held in high esteem by many. There are many schools of Indian philosophy who accept the authority of Vedas. But in reality, the Vedas are the works of some cunning priest who earned their living by duping the ignorant and the credulous. So the words of Vedas are not reliable because they are written by some clever people. And why they have written these false words? Because they want to generate some false hopes and promises in the mind of the people to persuade them so that they can perform Vedic rites and they can get tangible benefit. But what happens that tangible benefit is not for common man, that benefit is only for the priest. So now the question is asked by an opponent that will not our knowledge be extremely limited and practical life sometimes impossible if we do not accept the words of the experienced and do not depend on expert advice? So what happens that as we are finite beings, we do not have the knowledge of everything. So this will make us our knowledge extremely limited and it will make our practical life impossible. So for example, we are here sitting in India and we do not know anything about the Japan or USA or China, any other country other than our country. So what happens if we are not accepting those people's words who have been there, who have gone there, and who have the knowledge of these places? If we are not accepting their words, what will happen? That our knowledge will be limited. We will only know what is happening right now here with us or around us. We will not know anything about other places, right? And practical life will be impossible. So if you want to go to another place, suppose you want to go to Japan and you want to know about that place, then you will ask to a person who has been there, who know about Japan, right? Then only you can know that place well. Now what Charvakas say? They reply that insofar as we depend on any authority because we think it to be reliable, the knowledge obtained is really based on influence. So what happens if we are relying on a person's words and we believe that the person is authoritative? We are in reality basing our knowledge on influence. Why it is an inference? Because we have generated a belief through a mental process. And what is that mental process? That mental process is this authority should be acceptable because it is reliable, and all reliable authority should be accepted. As from a one particular person, if we are getting knowledge and we say that this person is authoritative and we should accept his words as reliable, so what we will do, there is this mental perception that we will accept all reliable authority on basis of this inference. And being based on inference, knowledge derived from verbal testimony or authority is as precarious as inference. So as testimony is also based on inference, it is also not reliable. And as in the case of inference, so here we often act on knowledge derived from authority on the wrong belief that it is reliable. So we have this belief that the person is reliable, so the knowledge the person is giving is also reliable, and on this basis we accept the testimony, and it will lead us to doubtful knowledge or erroneous knowledge. But what happens that sometimes this belief accidentally leads to successful results. Sometimes it will lead to successful result, but sometimes it will not. And we need a praman or a source of knowledge which will give us the undoubtful knowledge every time, which will give us knowledge that is free from error every time, not only once or twice. Therefore, authority or testimony cannot be regarded as safe and valid source of knowledge. So as neither inference nor authority can be proved to be reliable. So in that sense, first we have denied, Charvakas has denied the inference, then they denied the testimony, and they accepted perception as the valid source of knowledge. Right. Now coming to metaphysics. We have already discussed the epistemology so far. And in a nutshell, we can say that Charvakas accept perception as a valid source of knowledge. Right. And we have also discussed that epistemology means that it is a study of theories of knowledge. Right, now we are coming to metaphysics. So Charvaka metaphysics is also based on Charvaka's epistemology. The first thing is that what is metaphysics? Metaphysics is, it can be understood as theories of reality. Now, as per the Charvaka's conception, that perception is the only source of knowledge. So if we accept the perception as the only source of knowledge, we can rationally assert only the reality of perceptible objects. Only those things that we can see are real. Only those things that we can see are the existing things, and things like, or objects like God, soul, heaven, life before birth, or life after death, and any unperceived law like adrashta, apurva, the law of karma, they cannot be believed in because they are all beyond perception. So whatever you can see is the only thing that you can believe in. And material objects are the only objects whose existence can be perceived. We can only perceive the material things that are around us. So matter is the only reality. So in this way, Charvaka can be called materialistic school because they accept as matter is the only reality. Now, talking about the world, according to Charvaka, the world is made of 4 elements. As we know that there are 5 elements accepted by Indian thinkers. These are Akash, Vayu, Agni, Aap, and Kshiti. These Panchabhutas are accepted by other Indian thinkers, but Charvakas accept only 4 elements. Charvakas do not accept ether. For them, air, fire, water, and earth are the only elements. They reject the Akash because its existence cannot be perceived. We cannot perceive the existence of Akash, and it has to be inferred. In that sense, we only have 4 elements. The elements are eternal, but their combinations undergo production and dissolution. These 4 elements that Charvakas are talking about, they are eternal, but their production and dissolution goes under change. Material world is composed of 4 perceptible elements. These are the elements except Akash, except ether. All 4 elements are perceptible. So what Charvaka says next is that not only non-living material objects, but also living organisms like plants and animal bodies are composed of these 4 elements. So what happens that living organisms like plants, animals, humans, and non-living material objects like mountains and stones, all of them are composed of these 4 elements. And by the combination of these 4 elements, they are produced and to which they are reduced on earth. So when these 4 elements come together in different combination, then the matter is produced. And when these elements are reduced, the matter or the object is destroyed. Now coming to the soul, the concept of soul. As we have talked about the unperceived objects, the unperceived reality, which includes soul, God, life before death, life after death. So these things are beyond our perception. And as Charvaka believes only in those things that can be perceived, and only those things that can be perceived are real, in that sense, soul cannot be perceived. So, what Charvaka says, that the existence of consciousness is proved by perception. So, Charvakas deny that consciousness is quality of any unperceived non-material or spiritual entity. Charvaka says that soul is not something that is outside of the body. Soul is not something that is beyond perception. For Charvakas, soul or consciousness is also proved by perception. As consciousness is perceived to exist in the perceptible living body composed of the material elements, it must be a quality of this body itself. So what Charvakas are saying, they are saying that consciousness is a quality of this body. And as this body is perceptible living body, which is composed of perceptible 4 elements. So consciousness can also be perceived, right? So there are 4 elements which are perceptible elements. They combine together, they make this body, which is also perceptible. So the consciousness, which is a quality of this body, this perceived body, in that sense, the consciousness is also perceptible. Okay. Soul is nothing more than this conscious living body. So what Charvakas are saying, that soul is equivalent to this conscious living body. What we also say is Chaitanya Vishishta Deh Eva Atma. This Deh, this body, is Chaitanya Vishisht, is qualified with Chaitanya, that is consciousness. This body is itself Atma. And why they are saying this? They are saying this because we have direct evidence of the identity of the self with the body in our daily experiences and judgments, like I'm fat, I'm lame, I'm blind. So when we are saying that, so when I'm saying that I'm fat, whom I'm referring? I'm referring to this conscious living body. When I'm saying that I'm blind, so who this I is identifying? This I is identifying the conscious living body. This is identifying me. It is identifying me as a conscious living body. So, if this I, that is the self, were different from the body, this would be meaningless. All these statements that we were talking about, that I am fat or I am blind, if consciousness was something other than the body, then I cannot identify this I with the self. I cannot identify these statements, and I cannot identify the I with the consciousness, because that consciousness is outside of the body. But that is not what Charvakas are believing. Consciousness is not the quality of any of the 4 elements. So what Charvaka says, that they say that qualities not present originally in any of the component factors may emerge subsequently when the factors are combined. So suppose if somebody is asking that consciousness is not the quality of any of the 4 elements that we have talked about, except the Akasha, all those 4 elements, they are not conscious. None of those elements have this quality of being conscious. So if none of those elements are conscious, then how can we say that this body, which is a combination of those 4 elements, is also conscious? How can we say that? We cannot say. But Charvaka gives an argument. They say that the qualities which are not originally present in any component factor may emerge when the factors are combined. So, although we know that none of those four elements have the quality of consciousness, but when they are combined, they then this quality emerges. And Charvakas give an example for that. They give example of betel leaf, lime, and nut. They say that none of these things originally are red, but when they are combined together, they are chewed together, they acquire a reddish tinge. Right? Same thing placed under a different condition may develop qualities originally absent. So originally there was no consciousness. It was not present in fire. It was not present in water. It was not present in the other two elements. But when these four elements were combined, then the consciousness emerges. Another example that Charvaka gives is about molasses, that is good. That they say that originally molasses or good is non-intoxicant, but it becomes intoxicant when allowed to ferment. So initially it did not have the quality of intoxicant, but later on, after fermenting, after that process, it acquires the quality of intoxicants. Similarly, the material elements combined in a particular way give rise to the conscious living body. So this was the argument about how the four unconscious elements combine and they produces a conscious living body. So consciousness in that sense is an epiphenomena or a byproduct of matter. And there is no evidence of its existence independent of the body. There is no existence that the soul or the consciousness exist independent of the body. So what Charvakas are saying, they're saying that consciousness is always associated with the body. And when the body vanishes or when the body disintegrates, the consciousness also vanishes. So the consciousness is there in the body, in the living body, as long as the body lives. When there is no body, there is no consciousness. If the existence of a soul apart from the body is not proved, there is no possibility of proving its immortality. So, what they are saying that consciousness is a byproduct of body. So, when you cannot prove the existence of a soul independent of the body, you cannot say that it is immortal. It is also not immortal. It is mortal like human body, as human body is mortal. It dies, right? It is born at a particular period of time, and it dies after a particular time. So it is mortal. It is not going to live forever. As body is not going to live forever, the soul is also not going to live forever, right? So we do not need to prove its immortality. Soul is also a mortal thing. On the contrary, death of the body means the end of the individual. So the body dies and the consciousness also dies with it. So all questions about previous life, afterlife, rebirth, enjoyment of the fruits of actions in heaven or hell, therefore becomes meaningless. Why? Why these questions become meaningless? These questions like whether there was a previous life, whether I was another living body, or I was a body of animal, or the life after death, whether I will become something else other than the human, whether I will become a dog or a cow, or the enjoyment of the fruits of action, or about the fruits of your karma, the full of your karma, or the concept of heaven or hell, the questions of heaven or hell, all these questions that are related to the soul will become meaningless. Now, Given the four elements and their particular combination, consciousness manifests in the living body. What Charvakas are saying, that it is the particular combination of these four elements that gives rise to the consciousness. Okay, it is not the case that you combine the four elements in any proportion or in any way and the consciousness will manifest. It is not the case. The case is that the four elements has to combine, they have to combine in a particular combination so that to give rise to consciousness. Now, matter secretes mind as liver secretes bile. So here, mind is consciousness, the soul, and I forgot to change it. It is D. So matter, these four matters, they combine together and they give rise to mind. Similarly, as the liver secretes bile. Okay, so the so-called soul is simply the conscious living body. Chaitanya Vishisht Deh Eva Atma. Now, Sadananda in his Vedanta Sar mentions four different materialistic schools. So far, we have studied only one school, Charvaka, that is a materialistic school. But under this school, there are other schools as well. So there are some schools which identify the soul with the gross body, that the soul is this sthula sharira, this gross body that is visible. Some school, or sorry, the other school identifies the soul with the senses, that the soul is the senses, the indriyas, right? We have senses, we have sense of sight, we have sense of hearing. These senses are the soul. Other school identifies the soul with the vital breaths, that is prana. The other school identifies the soul with the mental organ, that is manas, that soul is the mind itself. All these schools, there is this common thing in all these schools, that soul is a product of matter. So even we have four different materialistic schools, they have one common understanding, that soul is a product of matter. Soul dies when the body dies. Now, Shantarakshita says that materialist Kambal Shwatra maintains the view that consciousness arises out of the material body associated with vital breaths. So, he is also, Kambal Shwatra also is one of the materialist person. Now, coming to the concept of God. So, as we have already studied, that Charvaka believes only in the perceptible objects, all those objects that we can perceive. So, do you think that Charvakas are going to accept the existence of God? As God's existence cannot be perceived, we can say there is no God. Of course, according to Charvaka, the material elements produces the world. All the supposition of a creator is unnecessary. This is the point of view of Charvaka, that those four elements, they come together, combine in a particular way, and they produces the material world. And we do not need a creator in that way. But there is an objection to this view. What is the objection? Can the material elements by themselves give rise to this wonderful world? Right? We see that the world around us is very wonderful. The river, the mountains, the plants, the trees, all this nature, we see that it is very wonderful. But can we say that it is a product of combination of material elements without there being an agent, without there being someone who combine these elements? So what the example is given by the people who are objecting Charvaka's view, they are saying that even the production of an earthen jar requires a potter. So we have the jar, and that jar is produced with the help of clay. The clay is the material cause, but Even we have the material cause, we need an efficient cause. We need someone to work on that clay. Can we say that the clay itself is producing is itself producing the earthen jar? Does it have that ability? Clay cannot produce earthen jar. Similarly, wood cannot produce any table or chair itself. What we need an efficient cause, an agent that will work on that matter. So we require an efficient cause like God. Why? Because these four elements that Carvakas has already talked about, they only supply material cause of the world. So we have the material cause of the world, but we need an efficient cause as well. For this objection, Carvakas reply that the materials have got each its fixed nature. They have their swabhav, and that swabhav is fixed. You might remember earlier we were talking about the swabhav of fire and swabhav of water. The swabhav of fire is that it is hot, and the swabhav of water is that it is cold. So Carvakas are saying that these elements have their fixed swabhavas, and it is by their natures and laws inherent in them that they combine together to form this world. So because of their nature, their swabhava, these four elements are coming together and they are forming the world. So we do not need any God. There is no necessity for assuming that there is a creator or there is an efficient cause or there is a God. There is no proof that the objects of the world are the products of any design. The Carvakas are again giving an argument that we do not have any proof that the world we are seeing is a product of any design. That the mountains we are seeing, the rivers we are seeing, we do not have any proof that there is a greater design, and all these mountains and rivers are the plans of that design. They can be explained more reasonably as the products of the elements. These things, these material things, these material objects can be explained as the products of the elements. Thus, Carvakas prefer atheism. As Carvakas are not accepting the existence of God, we can say that they are atheist. Now, we can also give some other names to Carvaka school. First is Swabhavad, as they are accepting the naturalism. They are accepting the natures of elements. They are accepting the Swabhavas of four elements. We can also call Carvaka philosophy as Swabhavad. Again, we can also say that Carvaka philosophy is Yatrachhava. That is, it is mechanistic philosophy. Why? Because it denies the existence of conscious purpose behind the world and explain it as a mere mechanical combination of elements. So there is, as Carvaka believes, there is no conscious purpose behind the world. It is only because of the combination of elements that this world is produced. So in that sense, we can also call Carvaka school as a Yadrachhavad. And lastly, we can also call Carvaka school as positivistic school. Why? Because they believe only in positive facts or observable phenomena. Observable phenomena are positive phenomena. We can only Carvakas accept only that thing which is perceptible. In that sense, Carvakas are positivist. Right, that was all for Carvaka Metaphysics. Hope you have understood it well. If there is any question or any query you want to ask, you can message in the comment box. Thank you, and we will meet in another class.